Hi there, my name is Mike Mwale. I'm a monitoring and evaluation specialist, and today I'm going to run you through the fundamentals of monitoring and evaluation in agriculture projects. So I own a consultancy firm called EvalHarvest, where we provide monitoring and evaluation services for industries in the agriculture as well as in the climate space. So if you want to know more about what we do, you can check out our website. It's called EvalHarvest, and you see a range of our services that we provide. And so in this session, we'll focus mainly on monitoring and evaluation for agriculture projects. And if you have any questions, you can just put them in the comment. I'll be able to read through and also give feedback to the comments as they come. So what are some of the learning objectives for this session? So by the end of this session, I expect the participants, yourselves, and everybody that will have access to this content to be able to define the key M&E concepts, and then also identify some of the M&E frameworks that are used in monitoring and evaluation, and also the data collection methods that are commonly used in M&E. And the other thing also, I wish that you understand the impact assessment, how to conduct an impact assessment and what's involved in an impact assessment. The other thing also is apply the best practices for reporting. That's also another important aspect that I expect you guys to understand by the end of this session. The other thing is the digital tools. We're in a digital era, so I'll share some of ways on how you could leverage some of the digital tools in this session. So to begin with, we'll look at the key concepts, which is monitoring and evaluation. What is monitoring? So monitoring is a continuous assessment of an ongoing project. You want to see whether the project is on track or whether there are some delays in the project. So that's just the basic definition of monitoring, what monitoring is all about. And monitoring helps us to understand whether we're doing the right thing. That's number one. Then the other thing is whether are we doing it right? It's not enough to just do the right thing, but are you doing it according to what you planned for? So that's what monitoring is all about. And the other thing that it does, it focuses on the inputs, activity outputs, and also schedules for timely correction. So if there's a mistake, there are some gaps that you've identified as you are conducting your monitoring visits. Monitoring will be able now to create those corrections that you want to work on. Okay. Then the other thing is evaluation. With evaluation, it's a systematic. Why is the video short? Why is it not? All right, thank you. I think we just had some interruption there. Apologies for that. So we'll look at what evaluation is all about. Evaluation is a systematic assessment of the objectives, right? It's something that you do when the project is ongoing and also when the project has come to an end. So it's very periodic and it's systematic. You cannot just do an evaluation at any point of time that you feel like doing. So you have to follow through the systematic approach that it takes for you to do that evaluation. And then it helps us to determine the relevance of the project. Are you doing the right thing in that particular community? Is it what the people need? So it helps us to answer those questions. The other thing is the efficiency of the project. Are we being efficient as we conduct these activities that we're doing, as we do these interventions that we're doing? Are we being efficiency with our resources as well? The other thing also is the effectiveness. Is what we're doing actually solving the problem that people are facing, the farmers? Is it solving the farmers' problem? It helps us to answer those. The other thing is the impact. We've trained farmers in smart agriculture. What is the long-term impact? Evaluation helps us to answer that. It helps us to answer the so what question. You've conducted training, you've built capacity in farmers in organic gardening, you've built capacity in farmers in agriculture, smart agriculture. But at the end of the day, so what? That's where now evaluation comes in to answer that question. The other thing is sustainability. Evaluation will help us understand whether our intervention is going to be sustainable even after we are long gone. That's evaluation. So that's something that you should understand. The other thing also, it helps us to conduct the attribution analysis. We want to know whether the things that we're doing are the change that we're seeing in that community, in the farmers that we're working with, is as a result of our intervention. That's the attribution. So it helps us to understand that. So those are some of the two concepts that you should understand if you're trying to get into the M&D space. And there are quite a number of concepts, but we just focus on these two key concepts for this purpose of this session. Then you look at the purpose now of agriculture in the purpose of M&E in agriculture. So the first thing is improves performance. When you have an M&D system in your agriculture project, you're going to improve your performance because you'll now be able to address some of the gaps that you identified as soon as you identify, you'll be able now to make some adjustments, those interventions. For example, you're doing a training on smart agriculture and you discover that farmers are not really understanding what you are trying to put across. You can make some changes to your presentation. Is it maybe it's too technical? Now it is M&E that will help you to identify those gaps. So it will help you now improve the delivery of that service, the delivery of that training. So that's another importance. The other thing is generate evidence. M&E is about evidence, it's about evidence. So it helps us to document our success, our wins, our loss, our lessons learned, the case studies. It helps us to document that. And that's evidence enough for us to actually publish policy briefs that can be used as a document to, push an agenda, a legislative agenda that can actually improve the well-being of the farmers. So it helps us to generate evidence, new research, new success stories, case studies. All these things are developed as a result of integrating M&E in your agriculture projects. The other thing is it ensures accountability. Because you have a strong M&D system in place, you'll be held accountable. And because you have built a system that is so transparent, and you actually be held accountable, and you actually provide evidence of the work that you're doing. And also, you actually be able to respond to government requests. The donors, they request for a report, you provide them because you've integrated M&E in your programming, and as a result, this ensures accountability of what you're doing. So basically, those are some of the purposes of M&E. Then, just to run you through a high-level summary of some of the frameworks that we commonly use in M&E, and these are frameworks that are being used as well in the agriculture space. And the first one is the theory of change, which is one of my favorite ones because a theory of change, it looks at the overall goal of that project, right? It looks at the overall goal of that project for us to ensure that the livelihood of the farmers improves. How are we going to do that? So now we need to do certain activities for us to have that goal that we want. So that's what the theory of change will do. It's a document that you're going to have all these steps that needed to be fulfilled before you actually hit that goal. As a result, you're going to document that, and it's something that you can even show to stakeholders. So, okay, this is what we want to achieve. And how we achieve it, it is through this theory of change. And a key stakeholder should be able to understand your theory of change without you explaining to them. The moment you give them the document, they see how everything is connected. So that's what a theory of change tries to do. It looks at the inputs, the activity, the outputs, the outcome, and the impact. It's going to explain how all these changes are going to be achieved. So that's a theory of change. It's a very powerful tool that I really enjoy to develop. The other thing is the logical framework. So this is a management tool. It's a project management tool that you have to develop in your programming as you're implementing your project. So this just helps us to make adjustments and also improve our intervention strategy or even our intervention design. And also, it actually helps us for planning. If you're planning for an intervention, you go back to your logical framework and see, is this thing aligned to what is in the logical framework? It helps you do that. You want to do an execution, you want to implement that a certain activity, and you want to do the execution, it will help you do that. If you want to do the evaluation, the first thing that you have to ask yourself is where is your logical framework, so that I see what you had planned for, so that even as I start to develop my evaluation plan, at least I have something in mind. So this is what this organization or this project was intended to do. And from there, I can now formulate my evaluation questions to just understand what transpired during the 4 or 5 years of your project implementation. Okay, so these documents, these frameworks should be simple as possible so that you don't confuse and lose yourself as you're trying to develop these tools. Then the last one is a result framework, which is a very result oriented. When you have a result framework in your project, it's mainly focused on the results. It's mainly focused on the outcomes. Okay. There is less of activities in the same document, but you can include them. But the key is now the intermediate results against the objectives. So that is what the result framework is all about. So it just helps us to track the progress against our objectives. And it also helps us to make those necessary adjustments. For example, you are doing a distribution of farming inputs, and one of your targets is not performing well. When you look at the results, it's not performing well. So you need to now make those adjustments, just understand what's really happening in that community. So that is what the result framework will do. It will give us that visualization of what is happening in terms of the result aspect. So those are some of the frameworks that we usually use in monitoring and evaluation, and you can adopt whichever tool that you want to use when you're developing an M&D plan. So you could have all the three frameworks in your M&D plan, but you can have two, maybe the theory of change and the result framework, or the logical framework and the result framework. So depending on what you're comfortable with, okay, you can have all the three in one document in your M&D plan, or you can have two in your M&D plan. So there's no harm in having three. You can have, the three of them, or you can have two. There's no harm. The key is you understanding your project and also different stakeholders understanding your project. Indicators are very, very important things that you have to take time to develop as an M&D, or as somebody that is in the M&D and research space. An indicator is a very important thing. It's a make or break. It can make your project, or it can make you look like you did not do the right thing. Why? If you don't create good indicators or smart indicators, the chances are that you may not meet your target, because you have created very complicated indicators, and at the end of the day, that is a loss. Okay, so basically that's something that we have to take note and take time as we're developing these indicators. So there are now, just to understand, just to break down what an indicator is all about. So an indicator is just a measurable variable that shows progress towards the objectives. So even as you're developing an indicator, your goal in mind is, what is the objective of this project, and also what is the overall goal of this project, so that once you develop that indicator, it's speaking to what you're planning to do, what you're planning to achieve. Okay, so always ensure that your indicators are smart. You have smart indicators. They should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be achievable, they should be relevant, and they should be time bound. You can just have an indicator that does not have a time bound when you are doing that activity, or the period that you are doing that activity. So you should have time to read. You can't just talk about training farmers. When are you training them, or when did you train them? So you need to have that time bound in your indicators as well. Just to run you through the four types of indicators that you are going to come across as you're developing your M&D plan, as you're implementing your project. The first one is the input indicators, which are the resources that you're going to use. If you're doing farming distribution of inputs, farming input distribution to farmers, that your indicators now will look at the amount that you've distributed, the amount of fertilizer that you've distributed to the farmers. So that's an input. You're looking at the resources that you're going to use in that particular project. The other one is the outputs, which are the intermediate results. Okay, you're doing the activity is to train farmers. That's your activity. So now what is the result? The result is the number of farmers that you've trained. That will be your indicator in that particular period, whether it was in Q3 or in 2024, that would be your indicator. Then outcome, these are the midterm or the medium term indicators, right? They look at the medium term effect of that intervention. Okay, so for example, the training that you've done, the input distribution that you've done, the question now that comes in, has all these things that you've done improved the yield per hectare for these farmers? So outcome indicators will help us to answer those questions. Then you have the impact now. When there's increased maize yield, what is the long-term impact? What is the long-term change that you want to see? You want to see a reduction in rural poverty. So you see how everything is just falling from from the resources that you are giving out to the intermediate results and also to the outcome and also to the impact. So that's like um, a result chain. It's what we call a result chain. Is that once you do this, you give people this training or you give people this input or this fertilizer, you're going to see a change in you know in the production. Once there's change in the production, you're going to see an improved in the livelihood. So that's something that we have to take note of, even as we are developing these projects. We need to think of the results. What is the change? This training that I'm giving the farmers, what is the overall goal? Am I just doing it because I want to hit the target or the donor requirements? But you have to think to say, if we train farmers in organic farming, are we going to achieve the goal of this project? Which is to reduce, for example, in this case where we want to have a reduction in poverty, rural poverty. You train farmers in that. Is it going to change that? So even as you're coming up with activities, you always have to think about the overall goal. What is it that we're trying to change in our programming or in our project? So basically, that is some of the processes that you can use for you to develop what we call smart indicators. Okay. Now we have to look at the data collection. Now that you've, for example, now that you've developed your indicators, the question now that comes next now is developing data collection tools and also monitoring. Okay. You've developed your indicators, you've developed your theory of change and all these are different tools. The question now is how are we going to collect the data and how are we going to monitor that data or that project? Okay. Um, just a background. Why do we need data? What is the importance of data? So data helps us to make decisions. Okay, it's very important for us to have effective and meaningful M&E because we need to be data driven. So that's the key importance of data. It helps us to make decisions because when you're implementing a project, it's all about decision. And if you don't have the right data, you make the wrong decision. And when you make the wrong decision, you end up affecting the project implementation and the results. At the end of the day, people lose confidence in your work that you're doing. So that's the reason why we say data is important and we need to have accurate and updated data, real-time data. Okay, that is what we need to do. Now, back to our indicators. We've developed our indicators. So how are we going to collect data from all those indicators that we've developed? So we have the primary data source, which is another type of data source. We have the primary and the secondary. So in here, we'll look at the primary. So we have key informant interviews. Okay, depending on the indicator that you've developed, how are you going to collect that data? You're going to have key informant interviews. You want to get the feedback from the uh, farmers. You train them in organic farming. You train them in smart agriculture. But now you want to understand to get their feedback. You use key informant interviews where you have one-on-one interviews with the beneficiaries who are the farmers. Then focus group discussion. Here you want to understand, maybe you want to get some lessons learned, or maybe you want to farmers to also learn from each other, from different farming practices that they're providing in different communities, and you bring them together in one space, and then you just let them speak based on the questions that are being asked. So you use the focus group discussion to understand that. The next thing is a questionnaire or survey. Maybe you want to know the livelihood change. You want to know how much yield farmers have achieved in that particular period. You can use a questionnaire survey to just get the numbers from the farmers. Okay, and it's quantitative in nature. The first two are qualitative. Then the last one is a field observation. You just observe as the farmers, they're doing their planting, their land preparation, their harvest. You can use that approach to just understand what's happening in the background and just sit in the background and just observe what's happening. So those are some of the primary data sources that you can use depending on the indicator. So a data source is determined by the indicator or the type of data that you want to collect. So even as you're choosing, maybe let me do key informant interview, the question is it going to answer this indicator? So those are some of the things that you have to understand. Then the next one now that we'll look at is secondary data. Secondary data sources. It's mainly for quantitative analysis, but also even qualitative, depending on the type of project that you are doing. So we have the public documents, government reports, these policies. You can skim and see if at all there's something that is related to your project, depending on what indicator you're trying to answer. The other thing is the project completion reports. Some of these interventions, these are interventions that maybe were done in other countries 5 years ago, 2 years ago. You can still refer to those project reports and learn from, whatever they did. Then the other thing is academic papers. There's a lot of journals, literature out there, poly abstracts. You can still get data from there to answer certain indicators that you have in your project. Okay. So that's some of the things that you can understand. Then some of the methods for data collection that are mostly used. We have the qualitative method and the quantitative method. Quantitative, you're looking at numbers. Qualitative, it's based on text, opinions, and so people are talking. There's text. It's That's qualitative. Then mixed method is a combination of both, which is a very uh, I love it because it gives us a comprehensive understanding, because sometimes numbers may not actually give us the true picture. They may not actually give us the meaning in even the true picture. But if we hear the voices of people, then we'll be able now to get the comprehensive insights of our project intervention. So that is something also that we can learn. Then so this is just an example of how Kenya is doing with regards to remote sensing, where they've come up with some of these innovation. I'll be able to share more of these insights, I think, in the next video. Evaluation and impact. You've developed your indicators, you've implemented your project, you've done the monitoring visits, and now it's time to evaluate the work that you've been doing. Now it's time to answer the so what. The training that you've done, so what? The farming distribution the farming distribution of inputs that you've done, so what? Teaching farmers about organic um, farming, so what? Teaching farmers about what's this? The soil testing, so what? Teaching farmers about how to implement the drip irrigation, so what? Now, when you reach that point, this is where now you have to do an evaluation to answer the so what. Okay? Then you now tell a story. Okay? You now tell a story that this is as a result of our intervention, or this in relation to other projects or other partners. This is what we've done. So now you want to tell people that what you are doing, the model that you're implementing, is working. And you can only do that, you can only tell them through conducting an evaluation or an impact assessment. So let me dive into what evaluation and impact assessment is all about. The purpose now. The purpose is provide evidence. People want to see evidence. They want to provide, when you do an evaluation on impact assessment, you want to provide evidence that your model is working. In this case, we have the agricultural extension programs. Are they good models? Do they have that value for money aspect? Is it a good investment? So those are some of the questions that you have to answer with the evidence, with the data that you're going to generate when you do an evaluation or an impact assessment. That is that, okay? And some of the methodologies that you will want to use, for example, when you're conducting an evaluation or an impact assessment, the first one is the experimental, where you do a random assignment to the treatment and control. So I'll in the next video, I'll be able to just dig deep into how this is done, and some of the guidelines and everything that you may want to do as you're doing an evaluation using this type of methodology. Then the other one is the quasi-experimental, where you do credible counterfactuals. So for that also, I'll be able to, dive into more detailed in the next video. So for this is just a high level summary of some of the things that we have to take note as we're developing some evaluation plans. The other thing is a non-experimental, which is very descriptive in nature. You're just, doing a report based on what you have done as an organization in that particular community. You use surveys or case studies with the same people that you've been working with, and you provide a report. You describe the data based on the feedback that you've been given. So this is a very straightforward one. Then measures of impact. How do you measure impact? You are talking about farmers. How do you measure the impact of your intervention that you're doing in that particular community? We're going to talk about the reduced cost, the cost of production, the cost of growing maize in 1 acre. Has it reduced? And if it has reduced, then that's a plus. That's a win for you because whatever you are doing is actually working. Then the other thing is increased productivity and sales. If your analysis shows that farmers have actually improved or increased productivity and sales, then it's a plus for you as well because you are doing the right thing. So that's how you measure impact. Then the value added. Farmers are no longer just growing groundnuts, but they're now turning it into peanut butter. That's a value addition. That's a value added um, result that you can document. The other thing is the willingness to pay for services. If the farmers were trained in the drip irrigation and they love it and they've seen that it's working, and now they are willing even to pay for that service to be put in their farms, that's a win. That's a win for you because that is what you wanted to gain at the end of the day. So that's some of the ways you can measure impact. Okay. Now we look at the evaluation types. Okay. What are some of the evaluation types? We have the inception and feasibility. Here we conduct needs assessment. Usually you conduct it before the project is implemented. You conduct a baseline. The reason why we conduct a baseline is for us at the end of the project, we should tell and generate evidence that when we came here, these farmers didn't know anything about smart agriculture. They didn't know anything about drip irrigation. They didn't know about organic farming. So you're doing a baseline to understand the level of knowledge or the level of, you just want to know what's the current status of this community with regards to the information that you're about to bring. So that at the end of the year or at the end of the period that you have been given to work in that community, you would tell a story and say, look, when we came, these guys never had this. But afterwards, we built capacity in them and now they have that skill. So always remember when you're implementing a project, don't make a mistake of implementing a project without conducting a baseline because there'll come a time when you need the baseline data. And now going back again to do that, when people have already gained that knowledge, you may have lost a very juicy success story. So that is another aspect that you have to look at. Then the other thing is the formative or the midterm. This one is usually done, mid-year of your project implementation. Okay, the mid period of the project implementation. So this one is ongoing and just helps us to assess if at all these objectives are met and also just gives room for us to make some changes based on the results anyway. So that is also another type. Then you have the summative or the terminal. The project is about to come to an end or the project has come to an end. You want to assess if those things that you say did you do them? Or that gap that you wanted to address, did you address it? So those are some of the things that you have to take note of in this summative or terminal evaluation. Then the last one is the impact. You're looking at long term. So this one is usually done after maybe the project has come to an end in 2024. You can do it in 2025, end of 2025, or you can even do it a good number of years because it's long term. Sometimes some of these trainings or projects that we do take time for us to see the impact. So that's another opportunity that you can take and see if at all your intervention actually changed people's lives. Okay. Then we move to reporting and learning. It's not enough to just collect data, analyze data and pack it. You need to learn from the numbers that you're generating. Okay. You need to have stakeholder engagement meetings with your farmers. You tell them, look, this is what we did in quarter 1, and this is the work that you guys did in quarter 1. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that we're doing well? It's M&E. All these things is monitoring and evaluation. You are evaluating yourself and evaluating also themselves. So you need to have these dialogue sessions where you sit down with different stakeholders, share your reporting, and learn from those results. Okay. So the importance really of reporting is it's all about providing timely and relevant advice for decision makers. Okay. Once you have a report, it's easy for you to make a decision based on that report. The other thing is communicating findings to stakeholders. You develop a report, don't pack it in your office. Disseminate it. let the different stakeholders see, let the farmers see, and also make sure that it's tailored to their knowledge. Because you don't want to develop a technical report and hand it over to the farmers. And I mean, come on, you have to tailor that to the farmers. Report must be simple, yet flexible. They must be very simple, basic, don't compromise things. So that is something that you have to understand. Then when it comes to utilization, I always say that information is only powerful once it's shared. You can have a beautiful report, but if you don't share it, it's useless. It's useless because no one is going to make a decision based on information they don't know. So share it so that people make the decision. Best practices, continuous communication. Throughout the process of your project, continuously engage various stakeholders, continuously engage the farmers, continuously engage the community. Okay. The other thing is you need to integrate the results in the management decision. You need to ensure that your results are integrated in the decision making. Okay. Then the other thing is that you need to report some of the negative findings so that you make those adjustments for learning and also for project improvements. Tailor the formats and venue for dissemination. You cannot develop presentation slides where there is no power. You go there, there's no power. There's no shading. And people don't even know what to do now. So you need to ensure you know your venue, know your audience, develop that and tailor that to the venue and also the audience. Okay? So basically those are some of the recommendation. Then the other thing that we have to look at is the reason why we need to have reports and also learning in our projects is that it's a donor requirement. The donors need to know what you guys are doing. You cannot just implement a project the whole year and only to report to the donor after 2 years. No, no, no. You have to share the results so that they know that whatever investments they've made, it's aligned to the results that you guys are producing. Okay? And also make sure that the reports, they're focused on the outcome and the impact. Because people are mainly interested in the results. They're not interested in what you've done. They're interested in what change have you brought. People are not interested in you training farmers. They want to see the change. You've trained farmers, yes, but so what? So they want to see all those aspects. So you need to ensure that you integrate that in your reporting. The other thing is just maybe an application in Zambia is the institutionalization of M&E, where we've developed M&E units in our government. Maybe it's a lesson learned. It's a success story for our country that almost all the government departments, there is an M&E personnel there to just help in terms of monitoring and tracking government activities. Okay. The other thing also is capacity building. So we need to build capacity also. People need to learn about how to write reports. They need to learn about M&E, how to use these results. Okay, that's another aspect that I wanted to share. Then the other thing is stakeholder engagement. You need to engage stakeholders because once you engage stakeholders, you're creating accountability and transparency. People will now be able to trust and honor the project. Okay, involve farmers. Even as you're doing your tools development, you're developing a data collection tool, you need to involve farmers so that they are part and parcel of that intervention. Okay. Then we come to the digital tools that maybe I can just share with you briefly. We have mobile apps. Okay, these are mobile apps that extension officers can use. We have tablets. These are mobile apps that people can use through smartphones, tablets, and go in the field to collect data. They can collect data using Kobo. They can collect data using ODK, and these are the different data collection softwares. So these can be used by the field officers, even the lead farmers, and this will reduce errors. So that's another opportunity that you can take. The other thing is the GIS. You want to map out the intervention areas. You need to know where you are working from in an area view to see how much work is being done. And also, if it's a climate-related project, you want to see how much damage, whatever agenda that you're pushing, how much damage has the drought caused in that particular location. So you can do that through using the GIS and also the Earth observation. Cloud platforms that you can use. You can come up with cloud platforms like farm management information systems that help that helps you to run your farm even remotely and also just monitor and understand what's happening in your farm. So that's some of the tools that you can develop. We can develop these. We actually develop these for different key stakeholders. So if you are interested in farm management systems, you can always reach out to us and we'll be able to develop that. The other thing is the digital farmer registers. This is another digital profiling of farmers. You want to know which farmer, where are they based, who are they, their gender, age, all those things you want to know about the farmer so that it's easy for you to make those decisions. Even as you're passing the registration, the policies, you are able now to understand that, okay, in this particular area, we have farmers that are in the age of 50 to 60, 50 to 80, whatever. So all those things will now help you now to plan on what kind of intervention you want to take there. The other thing is the field sensors. Field sensors. So these are some of the tools that we are now currently using, where you would put some of the sensors in the soil so that they detect um, the moisture, the quality, and also detect the potential crop growth. So that's some of the things that you can use to monitor your project, your agriculture project. Now, some of the benefits and local use. So those are just some of the data tools that the digital tools that you can use. I think in the next session, I'll be able to just, add more examples of the tools and some of the farm management systems that we've developed so that you guys can learn and see what's happening in the background. Okay. Now, some of the benefits and use cases. We've seen optimized input and reduced environmental impact because you are using digital tools, meaning you're preventing the environmental impact. Okay, there will be less environmental impact as a result because you're doing it online and you're using digital tools to just collect data. So it's easy, there's less of environmental impact. The other thing is automated documentation at farm level and farm level digital evidence because you have developed this farming management system, digital registers. So now it's easy for you now to document, to automate the data because you already have that information in your system. The other thing is increased transparency and also regional information aggregation because you have that data in your system. So it's easy for you when you say we have 100 farmers in this particular area, you go in the data set and you find those farmers. So it's easy it makes us easy now. It makes it easy for us to work on different reports or projects. Now, when it comes to the challenges, some of these things, they come with their own challenges. Even as we're developing these farm management systems, there are always these challenges, so, and the first one is really acceptance. It's hard sometimes to convince people about these tools, you know, and it's very tricky. But I believe that we are on the right path. We've seen quite a number of people coming to our offices to just get and also learn more about some of these services. Then the other thing is the technology cost. It's not easy to just build up these systems. You need to have some of these costs so that there are costs that are attached to these tools that we develop. For them to be stored on the cloud server, you need to have, it's a cost. So, and most of our countries don't have data centers. So, yeah, there's always that cost that comes in play. But so far, so good. We are seeing a lot of people adopting to some of these tools, and also just the cost. Buying a drone that will help you spray your field. It's very expensive. That drone is expensive. Most of these, they're above $5,000. For you to just get a very heavy industrial drone, you need at least 5,000 and above. So now, which farmer is going to, have that amount of money and buy that too? So basically, that's something that we have to look at. Now, just a key takeaway. So this was just a high-level summary. If you need a detailed training in M&E on agriculture, we'll have a session, we'll have a training, I think in September. And I believe you can sign up once you see the post, you can sign up so that you're part and parcel of this training and learn more. So my key takeaways is that M&E it's a strategic tool. You have to make it your friend, even as you're implementing your project. It's it's very important for project management and continuous improvement because you're monitoring. You see a gap, you address it. Okay? Your project is success, you want to answer the evidence part, you evaluate. So that is something that you have to understand. Then the other thing is that M&E embraces holism and integration because M&E requires a systematic multi-dimension approach. Uh, so all these systems that we develop, they are very systematic. Okay, they are very systematic, and in a sense that you can integrate them to different projects. So, for example, this knowledge that you have gained now, you can integrate it to another project that is not related to agriculture. So, are some of the things that it embraces: the holism and integration. The other thing is that my is that we need to focus on what we call uh, the results and attribution. We need to move away from the traditional M&E that was focusing mainly on focusing mainly on the activities. No, we've trained farmers, we've done this, but we now want to answer. We need to answer the real questions of the so what. You've trained farmers. Uh, so what? So we need to focus mainly on the outputs and the outcome as well as the impact. Okay, that's where the money is. So that's what we need to focus on. Then the other thing is prioritize local capacity and participation. So we need to build local M&D capacity and ensure that there's active participation for ownership and sustainability. So even the farmers, teach them about these digital tools. Teach them about the basic monitoring skills that they need to have for them to, have that high yield that you're trying to adopt, that you're trying to push. So teach those basics so that they understand one or two things for them to help them get best out of the project. Okay. The other thing is leverage innovation. We're in a digital era, so the earlier we adopt these tools, the better. The more we delay, the more expensive they become. Okay. Then the other thing is that learning is key. M&D should inform policy, strengthen services, and contribute to sustainable agriculture development in Zambia, in Africa across. Okay. So basically, that's the session for today. And if you need a tailored teaching or training, please, you can always reach out to me. I'm available to provide that training. If it's an organization that needs that training, I'm available to provide that training. If it's an individual, I'm available for one-on-one trainings and one-on-one consultation and mentorship. Please let me know. Thank you.